Death has come to your little town.
You like scary movies?
Uh-huh.
What's your favorite scary movie?
True classic. Never goes out of style.
Have you checked the children?
Boogeyman! 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 Boogeyman!
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
We all go a little mad sometimes.
Why do you want to know my name?
I want to know who I'm looking at.
Hello and welcome to the Talksomehorror podcast, where we talk about all things horror. I'm your host Corey, and I'm just your average gay aspiring filmmaker who loves scary movies. Beware, there will be spoilers, so if you don't mind those, let's talk some horror. Today we're going to cover last year's Ready or Not, the movie that tells you exactly why you should never get married. Before we get to that though, it's time for another segment of How I'm Staying Spooky. I just recently watched the first season of the Charmed reboot, and although it's not really a horror show, it's a show about witches who fight demons, so I think it deserves to be part of the horror conversation. I never watched the original series. I was more of a Buffy guy, and Charmed just never interested me. But I really enjoyed the reboot, and I'm looking forward to when season 2 drops on Netflix. Still working on Sabrina 2, and that's how I'm staying spooky this past week. With that out of the way, let's get back to the movie. Ready or Not premiered at the Fantasia International Film Festival on July 27, 2019, and was later released theatrically August 21st, 2019. With a budget of only $6 million, it went on to gross $57.4 million. It received generally positive reviews from critics and was called smart, subversive, and darkly funny. Ready or Not currently holds a Rotten Tomatoes score of 88%, a 64% on Metacritic, and a 6.4 out of 10 on IMDb. With 16 nominations at various award ceremonies, it received 2 wins at the Fright Meter Awards, one for Best Screenplay and Samara Weaving winning Best Actress. Guy Busick and R. Christopher Murphy wrote the script that was directed by Radio Silence's Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillette, and was produced by Mythology Entertainment, Vincent Films, and Radio Silence. Writers Guy Busick and R. Christopher Murphy get cameos in a YouTube video when one of the characters watches it to learn how to use a crossbow. When making the film, the actors were worried about having multiple directors, but shortly after filming, everything went perfectly because Radio Silence was great at collaborating between themselves and with the cast and crew. If you're able to, I highly recommend watching the 42 Making of documentary that's included on the special features on the home video release. It looks like everyone had a blast making this movie from start to finish. I first saw this movie when it hit theaters last year, and I was expecting something like You're Next, where the bride is a badass survivalist and murders the family to save herself. While the movies are similar, Ready or Not doesn't take that approach, and I love the movie for that. Instead, the bride is more realistic and just someone trying to survive, but we'll get more into that later. This was my second time watching the movie when I watched it for this podcast. Did I still enjoy it this time around? Let's find out. The movie begins with a shot that pans over board games that were created for the film, with titles like Family Ritual and Secret Council, and I'm a little salty that I'll never get to play any of them. We see 2 kids running around a mansion and find out it's young Daniel and young Alex. Young Daniel hides Alex in a closet as a man with an arrow in his gut appears and begs young Daniel for help. It doesn't work though, and young Daniel gives away the man's location. I guess he doesn't realize that snitches get stitches. The man gets another arrow to the chest and is dragged into a room by a group of lay domases wearing masks as the bride cries. She's wearing her wedding dress still, so you know that these two are very recently married. Despite what her family is doing, the bride composes herself and follows them into the room as the doors close, and young Daniel sits there realizing what he's done. We're now in present day as our current bride Grace, played by the amazing Samara Weaving, goes over her vows. She roasts her fiancé's entire family and her fake vows, calling her soon-to-be brother-in-law a drunk who always hits on her, points out how her soon-to-be father-in-law hates her, and the groom Alex, played by Mark O'Brien, interrupts her and admits his family has a lot to deal with. And they just broke a major rule. The groom is never supposed to see the bride before the wedding, so I guess they deserve everything that happens to them after this. Adult Daniel, played by Adam Brody, walks in and tells Grace she doesn't belong in the family, but he means it as a compliment because the Ladomases are fucked up. And even though everyone has a fucked up family, these people take the cake. Alex also tells Grace she can call off the wedding if she wants, and I can't believe Alex waited until now to give Grace an out. Is he getting cold feet about the stabby? Unfortunately for Grace, she stands her ground and is committed to marrying Alex and joining this family that's been keeping the dark secret from her. Let's be real though, the Ladomas family made their fortune by making board games. That's super cool, and I'd be down to become a part of that family too. And the fact that they're rich is an added bonus. As Grace and Alex get ready to say I do, they take some family pictures and we get to meet more of the Lado Mas Dominion, as they like to call themselves. We see Aunt Helene, played by Nikki Guadagni, who stares at Grace like she's trying to shoot laser beam from her eyes at her. And I feel like I relate to her the most because when I hate someone, I don't hide it either. Then we meet Alex's father, Tony, played by Henry Czerny, who doesn't hide his disapproval of Grace while he talks to Daniel. We also meet Daniel's wife, Charity, played by Elise Levesque, who is a stone-cold bitch who I'd compare to Regina George from Mean Girls. She's also got this amazing 20s-looking dress. Grace takes a moment to herself, though, and Alex's mom, Becky, played by Andie MacDowell, joins her and tells her that the family didn't approve of her either when she married Tony, and gives her some advice. She tells them to fuck them because it doesn't matter what they think. All that matters is what Alex thinks of her. We also see 3 maids, Clara, Tina, and Dora, who all look really slutty, and I wouldn't be surprised if they did more than clean up after the family, if you know what I mean. And honestly, even though you can tell the family is a bunch of douchebags right away, I don't hate them. The happy couple says I do, and the best part about the ceremony is that Aunt Helene doesn't even clap and still gives this nasty look like she smelled a pile of shit or something. Grace wastes no time trying to consummate her marriage, but Alex isn't really in the mood and says he needs to tell her something. She just wants that D though, so she could care less about what he wants to tell her. This is when you find out Aunt Helene is a kinky voyeur because Grace catches her watching them from the corner of the room. Luckily for Grace, Aunt Helene wasn't there to watch them bang, and she tells them that the rest of the family's waiting for them in the game room. She leaves and Alex tells Grace the family has a tradition of initiating new family members with the game the night of the wedding. Sadly for Grace, this is only the half-truth, and she thinks this is a little silly, but she goes along with it. If it were me though, I'd be totally down for this. Playing a game as an initiation seems like a blast, and I'm definitely making this a family tradition in my house. Kids are marrying someone else, gotta play a game. We made new friends, gotta play a game. Had a new baby, they gotta play a game or get the fuck out. The newlyweds head to the music room, and this house is amazing. It's got that old money feel to it, with old-fashioned furniture, polished wood, and candles all over the place. Grace talks with Becky, and it's revealed she was a foster kid and never had a family of her own, so even though the Lado Masses aren't her ideal family, she's genuinely happy to finally belong to one. But don't worry, Grace, in a few hours you won't be feeling that way anymore. Alex's sister Emily, played by Melanie Scrofano, and her husband Fitch, played by Christian Brune, arrive with their 2 kids, Georgie and Gabe. The kids are running around wearing the murder masks, and a disturbed Daniel tells them to take them off. But Fitch gives Daniel the don't tell me how to raise my kids look and tells the kids to keep wearing those murder masks. Emily and Fitch introduce themselves to Grace, and Emily literally has cocaine visible around her nose, and Grace subtly tells her so she can clean it up. Emily's not embarrassed though, she just laughs it off like it's no big deal. Fitch apologizes for not being able to make it to the wedding because they couldn't get a flight sooner and they refused to fly coach. He definitely fits in with this family. Emily says hi to Aunt Helene, and she doesn't even like her own family because she hits her with the brown-haired niece, you continue to exist, which is pretty savage. Tony tells the family it's almost midnight, so it's time to start the game, and I'm like, almost midnight? That's way past my bedtime. The family goes to the game room and sits at a table, and Tony starts going over the history of how the Lado Mas Dominion began. His great-grandfather made a deal with a man named LaBelle, where he would help build the Lado Mas fortune if they stuck by the tradition of playing a game each night someone new joined the family through marriage. The family believes that by following this tradition, it's what allowed them to continue to maintain their financial success and expand beyond card and board games because Tony also bought 4 sports teams. What a flex. But Grace doesn't get the whole story, and Tony says the game that they play is chosen at random by a box that LaBelle gave the family. They put a blank card in, and the new family member receives a card with the title of the game they'll play. And I wonder if the choices are only games that existed at the time, or if it adds new games as they're invented. Imagine playing Super Smash Bros. As part of the initiation. And I think it'd be a hilarious parody if the family played Monopoly, and if you went bankrupt, you died. But Charity says when she joined the family, she was given chess. Fitch says when he joined, he was given Old Maid. Both games were played normally and nothing happened. Tony starts passing it around the table, and the family members are worshipping the box, which is weird. Daniel's killing vibes, though, and just passes it to Charity. He's not enjoying this, and he's being a buzzkill. He needs a drink. Once Grace gets the box, she pulls out a card that says they'll play hide and seek. She thinks it's funny that they're really going to play hide and seek, but the rest of the family must hate that game because they all look shocked and like they're not happy about it. Well, almost all of them. Tony definitely doesn't look torn up about it. They tell Grace the object of the game is basic hide and seek. She hides and the family tries to find her. Grace jokingly asks how long she's going to hide, and Tony tells her until sunrise. She goes off and the family knows the drill. They start choosing weapons as this 20 Eras Hide and Seek song plays, which was an original song made for the movie. If you've seen the posters for this movie and seen the trailers, then you've seen the shot of the family standing together with all of their weapons ready, and it goes perfectly with the song as it ends and they start their hunt for Grace. Luckily for Grace, the family plays fair because they turn off all the security cameras in the house, and I gotta respect murderers who don't cheat and play by the rules. But they also put the house on lockdown so no one can go in or out without disabling the locks. And the butler is the one manning the control room. Alex is really in love with Grace though, and he can't participate in this hunt for her, so he stays behind. The remaining Les Domases leave Charity to guard him. Meanwhile, Grace hides in a dumbwaiter as Claire goes looking for Georgie, who left his bed. Alex takes the family's secret passages through the walls, and Charity comes in and asks him if he wants some company in a really sexual way. Maybe she wants to bone her brother-in-law like Daniel wants to bone his sister-in-law, I don't know. And I'm shocked at how Fitch and Charity are going along with this, no questions asked. They really do belong in this family. Grace is tired of the games though, so she gets out of the dumbwaiter and rips her dress in the process, and I would be pissed if I were her. When I got married, I tried my best to keep my suit clean, and I would have been livid if it got ripped or dirty. She's not as anal as me though, and she also sucks at hide and seek. Once I find a good hiding spot, I commit and will stay there for hours if I have to. She starts wandering the halls when Alex drags her into his room and tries to tell her she's in real danger. They hide as Claire comes in the room though, and Emily, thinking it's Grace, shoots Claire in the eye. The others come in the room and Daniel asks if this counts as the sacrifice, but Aunt Helene says it has to be the bride. And the dad also says that Grace has to be kept alive for the ritual. Emily is hilarious because she tries to console Claire as she chokes on her blood and tells her it's going to be okay, like she doesn't have a bullet in her face. They're not too broken up though, since she's just the help, and they take Clara's body and continue the hunt for Grace. And Grace is shook as Alex tries to help her escape through the walls. She stops him and asks what the fuck is going on, and he tells her his family believes that if they don't sacrifice Grace to LaBelle by sunrise, then the entire family will die. She's rightfully upset that he didn't warn her of this, and he tells her that she was the one who wanted to get married. Like, dude, what the fuck? Divorce. If he really loved you, he wouldn't have brought you here if there was the potential that you could be sacrificed. Meanwhile, Emily comes back in the room and she does a line of coke like the good times she is. Back in the walls, the newlyweds continue their first fight as a married couple, and Alex reveals he went along with it because 9 out of 10 times hide and seek isn't picked, and the last time it was picked was 30 years ago. He also says that if anyone gets married and refuses to pick a card from the box, then the family will kill both of the newlyweds. All of this just makes me see Alex for what he truly is, selfish. He only married Grace because he knew that she would leave him if he didn't propose, and he kept all of this because he knew that she would leave him if he told the truth, and those are major red flags. Despite all of this, Alex is in love with Grace and plans to escape his family with her for good. He devises a plan where he'll reverse the lockdown and get Grace out of there, but to do that they need to split up. He tells Grace where to go on the walls, and I would die because if I can't write down directions or use my GPS, I forget. The two split up and Grace tears part of her dress off so she can move around easily, and honestly, fuck that dress. I'd do the same if I was her. I'd also wreck their house as I escape too. Grace gets to the end of the hall and forgets which door leads to the kitchen. She goes through the wrong door, and on the other side she runs into Daniel, Tony, and Aunt Helene carrying Clara's corpse. She takes off and Emily cuts her off, but she's a horrible shot and manages to shoot everywhere around Grace, allowing her to escape. Grace ends up in the study and tries opening the windows, but they're all locked. She's smart though and picks up a chair to break the window, but she puts it down when she hears someone coming. It's Daniel though, and Grace pleads with him to help her. Daniel's torn, but since he's a snitch, he says he's going to call the others after he gives her a head start. If I were Grace, I'd give him a blowjob or something to keep him quiet, but I'm a whore and she's not, so kudos to her. She takes her head start and he calls for his family after giving her more time than he originally told her he would. As we see the family hear his calls, we also see Emily taking pills like, damn girl, slow down before you OD. Charity arrives first and being the stone cold bitch that she is, talks down to Alex for being spineless and not into his family's tradition. She also gets some character development because she says she's 100% with this tradition because she had a troubled past and would rather die than lose the perks of being married to Daniel. And I gotta give the movie props for giving these side characters these character development moments, because in horror movies it's pretty rare. The others arrive and Emily accidentally shoots the second maid, proving she's a cold-blooded killer. Sadly though, she's killing all the wrong people. Aunt Helene is pissed that people keep asking if the maids count as sacrifices. The family starts arguing about using the security cameras since Grace is harder to kill than they anticipated, and Aunt Helene is against it because it's against tradition. And Tony points out that it's not tradition that great-grandfather was born before cameras were invented, and they decide to turn them on. But when Charity asks if they can use modern weapons, Tony says that's against tradition, and Aunt Helene scolds him for picking and choosing which traditions to follow. I find it hilarious because that's what everyone does in real life. Grace runs into Dora, who is trying to hide because all the maids keep dying off. but karma gets her because after she tries to give away Grace's location, she gets smashed in the dumbwaiter. Grace goes back to the game room and takes the gun on the display that great-grandfather used back in his day. She gets to look at herself in the mirror, and even though she looks badass, I like how she acknowledges how crazy this is when she says Jesus. And even though she looks like a badass, she isn't a badass killer like most of the women in horror movies like this. She's just your average person doing what she has to do to survive. She didn't even make sure the gun was loaded and probably never used a gun in her life. Grace gets to the kitchen as Alex goes to the control room, but before they can execute their plan, Jeeves walks in and Grace has to hide as he makes his tea. Grace loads the gun and she would be horrible in Don't Breathe because she makes a lot of noise. Jeeves ignores all the noise, and when Alex unlocks all the windows and doors, Grace points the gun at Jeeves and tells him to move. He refuses and Grace pulls the trigger, but nothing happens because he reveals the ammo Grace has is display only. Grace smashes the teapot of boiling water over his head and runs. Alex watches this on the security cameras, and he would do great at commentary with his reactions. Daniel and Tony get to the control room a little too late because Alex destroys everything and nearly chokes Tony out. Daniel distracts Alex and Tony knocks him out though. I gotta say, this family is a mess and I enjoy every minute of their back and forth with each other. They're just as inexperienced as Grace and it evens the playing field. The family handcuffs Alex to his bed in a non-sexy way and agree to leave him there until the sacrifice is complete. Aunt Helene reveals her husband was the man who was killed in the beginning and that Alex will come around like she did. And there's a theory that LaBelle rejected Aunt Helene's husband as well as Grace because those two were kind of pulling away Aunt Helene and Alex from the family. And it makes you wonder if the only people that play hide and seek are the one that he doesn't really want to join the family. Meanwhile, Finch asks the internet if devil packs are real. And I'm like, you're way past that, dude. You've already committed attempted murder. Grace gets on the roof and smashes those horror tropes when she jumps to the ground. She runs down the aisle where she got married earlier, and I love the contrast between now and the wedding. Someone follows her with a flashlight and she hides in the barn. The person following her finds her and we see that it's Georgie, and this little fucker pulls out a gun and shoots Grace through the hand. And I cheered at this part because she punches that little bastard in the face and knocks his ass out. If a kid tried to kill me, I'm fighting them just as if they were an adult. A goat scares Grace though and she falls into a pit of dead goats and the corpse of Aunt Helene's dead husband. Poor Grace climbs out of the pit, and before she gets completely out, the ladder breaks and she has to grab the edge of the pit. She's having the shittiest luck and she ends up putting her hand that was shot over a nail and has to rip it off. I told you it's bad luck to see the bride before the wedding though. And I also love that she's getting fucked up. She rips her sleeve off to wrap her hand and cusses Georgie out for being the little fucker that he is. Grace runs through the yard and Charity spots her and fires at her, but since these weapons suck, she misses. She informs Jeeves that Grace is outside and he smiles because he plans to capture her because it's personal for him now after she burned his face. Grace squeezes through the fence and it slices her back up, which always makes me cringe when I watch it. She tries to flag down a car, but the driver just tells her to get out of the road and keeps driving. And when she tells him off, it's one of the funniest parts of the movie.
What the fuck is wrong with you? You fucking animal, you piece of shit, little tiny dick licker fucking asshole fucking eye!
The Lato-Masas nearly accept their defeat when they learn Grace escaped the property, and when Daniel tries to leave, Tony asks him if he thinks this is a game, and Daniel responds with, yeah, hide and seek. Tony nearly has an aneurysm with how angry he gets, and I'm like, Daddy, chill. Becky calms him down though, which she has to consistently do throughout the movie. She makes Daniel and Emily take care of the maids' bodies because they keep fucking up, and Fitch asks Charity if they should cut ties and run, and again I'm like, dude, you're way too late for that. Your ass is definitely going to jail if she survives. Daniel and Emily dump the bodies in the goat pit and he tells her they all deserve to die, but she says her kids don't. They find Georgie though, and after he tells them what he did, Emily tells him he did good. And it's a heartwarming scene of a mother passing down the idea that murder is totally acceptable. Daniel watches in horror and realizes that even the kids deserve to die too. Jeeves finds Grace and nearly runs her over. He gets out of the car and they fight, and Grace ends up kicking his ass. She chokes him out and makes these animalistic noises, and I love it. Samara's not afraid to do ugly acting, and it's one of the things I wish I saw more of in a horror movie and movies in general. She doesn't kill him though and steals the car. While she attempts to drive away, she calls roadside assistance and Justin answers the call. She tells him to call the cops, but the car's been reported stolen, so now he has to shut it off. She and Justin have a hilarious back and forth, and Jeeves finally catches up and shoots her with a tranquilizer dart. Jeeves FaceTimes with the family and informs them he's bringing Grace back to the house. He turns his music up and celebrates a little early because Grace comes to and kicks the fuck out of his face. The family watches and they would also do great at commentary because their reactions are gold. Jeeves crashes the car and dies as a result. Grace crawls from the wreckage and Daniel finds her. And all I have to say about Daniel is he is the nastiest skank bitch I have ever met. Do not trust him. He is a fugly slut because he knocks Grace out after he tells her he doesn't want his family to die, but I'm convinced he only did it because his dad was watching. Becky checks on Alex and he tells her that if Grace dies, he will kill her. She doesn't believe him though, and after he roasts her parenting skills, he says this ritual is all bullshit, and Becky says that if that were true, he wouldn't have let Grace play the game. And she's right. I do love the commentary here though about how kids don't recognize the awful things their family instills in them when they're young because to them it's just normal life and the toxic behaviors are all they know. Alex seemed to have realized it wasn't right though, which is why he became estranged from his family and wants nothing to do with them. I don't know, to me it's powerful because it's something that is true and that everyone can relate to. The family prepares for the ritual, and Charity keeps being that bitch when she puts on her robe and looks in the mirror as if this is her final form. The family begins the ritual with Grace tied to a table that has a pentagram on it. She wakes up to them chanting and drinking blood, and this is where I draw the line. Everything up until this point was fine, but I am not drinking blood. Absolutely not. Before Tony kills Grace, they all start vomiting because Daniel poisoned the blood. He unties Grace and says that the family isn't going to die, but they need to get out of there fast before they feel good enough to come after her again. Alex manages to saw through his bed and gets the handcuffs off. Charity finds Grace and Daniel and points her modern gun at them. Daniel blocks Grace, and after Charity realizes he doesn't care if she dies, she shoots him in the neck. And does she seriously think she's going to still be a part of this family after she just murdered Daniel? Her ass is definitely out of the will now. Grace attacks her and Charity fires all of the remaining bullets. Grace overpowers her and takes the gun. She pulls the trigger in Charity's face, but it's empty, so she just pistol whips her instead. As Daniel bleeds from his wound, Grace gives him a heartfelt thank you, and she's a better person than me because I hold grudges and I would never shed a tear for him after everything that's happened with his snitch ass. Grace runs off and comes across Tony, who tries to belittle her as nothing more than a sacrifice, but Grace knocks his ass out with a lantern and sets the house on fire. Meanwhile, Alex finds Daniel as he bleeds out and dies in Alex's arms. Alex is sad to see his brother go, and I thought he was going to turn on Grace at this point because he was going to blame her for his death. Meanwhile, Grace runs into Becky, who attacks her. Grace is losing the battle, but she manages to get LaBelle's box and uses it to kill Becky by smashing her face in. This is the only time Grace kills someone with her own hands, and it's extremely brutal. Alex walks in and Grace is busted. Shockingly though, he still chooses Grace over his family and apologizes to her for everything. When he tries to comfort her, she pulls away though, and those red flags come back up because as the wheels start turning in Alex's head, he realizes Grace won't be with him after this, and I don't know why he's shocked or sad because who in their right mind would stay with you after this? I'm out. Alex's true nature comes out like Aunt Helene predicted earlier, and turns out he's one of those husbands that will kill you if you try to leave him because he turns on Grace and calls his family to alert them of Grace's location. He truly is a Leidomas after all. The others come to the dining room and they're so wrapped up in trying to kill Grace that they don't even care that the house is on fire. The sun is rising though, so they throw Grace on the table and start their chanting again. Alex is the one with the knife this time, and he's fully prepared to sacrifice Grace at this point. As he lifts up the knife, Grace manages to dig her nails into Aunt Helene's hand and turn her body so the knife only goes into her shoulder and not her heart. Grace takes the knife and breaks free and does the best banshee scream as she backs into a corner. Sadly for the Leidomases, the sun is up and Aunt Helene pulls the curtain back, but wait, nothing happens. It looks like the entire thing isn't real after all. The family is understandably shocked, and it's really awkward. It's like they just found out Santa isn't real. Oops, spoilers if you believed in Santa. But Aunt Helene knows that Grace would turn them in if she's kept alive, so she picks up her axe and screams the girl still dies. As she charges towards Grace though, she fucking explodes. Yeah, she literally explodes and her blood and guts go all over everyone. Fitch says it's real after all and he's the next one to explode. Charity says she wants to go back home and she takes everything back, but surprise bitch, your ass explodes too. Grace starts laughing and I would laugh too. This family is awful and sold their souls to get all of their money, and after all the sacrifices over the years, they're finally getting what they deserve. Emily tries to run off with her kids, and the three of them explode and paint the walls with their blood. Tony has one last freak-out moment, telling LaBelle he did everything he was supposed to, and kaboom, he explodes. Alex is the last Leidomas standing, and the dude is fucking nuts at this point and giving off major creep vibes as he tells Grace they can be together because he didn't explode and his family is all gone now. But Grace tells his ass she wants a divorce and throws her wedding ring at him, and he explodes all over her. LaBelle appears in his chair and nods at her for winning the game. As the house goes up in flames, firefighters arrive and approach Grace as she sits on some stairs outside smoking a cigarette. They ask her what happened to her and she gives the best response, so she tells them in-laws, and that's Ready or Not. I freaking love this movie, and I can see it becoming the new Don't Breathe for me, because when people who haven't seen it come over, I show it to them and they all love it. It blends the comedy and horror so well. Even though some things are over the top, Grace's reactions are always grounded. The acting is spot on and everyone nailed their characters. I felt like everyone got their time to shine, and Grace had this charm about her that only Samara Weaving could bring. And for the Lado Masses, even though they were horrible people, the actors all did a phenomenal job portraying them, and they were so well written that I didn't hate their guts. This is how you make characters that are horrible people but likable. Radio Silence and everyone else behind producing the film collaborated so well together and made a movie that had strong direction, and is a great example how even if you have too many cooks in the kitchen, with the right people, it can all come together perfectly, and it doesn't always have to end up like Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers. And the cinematography was great, the way it started out all classy and clean in the beginning and got more chaotic towards the end. The script was clever too. The writers even made detailed backstories for the characters and gave them to the actors as notes, with no intention of ever doing exposition dumps during the movie, to give motives to why characters like Charity and Fitch were okay with going along with everything. And that just goes to show how great these actors were, because they were able to bring all of that on screen. You can tell there was a lot of care behind writing the script, and luckily it had the right team behind it to bring it to life. The music was another highlight for me. It feels very classical, like something a rich family would listen to, which gives the movie that old money feeling throughout. And the same goes for the production design. I love the use of the candles and the antique furniture and polished wood. It's hard to believe they did all of that with only $6 million. I also want to talk about the costume design, because 17 different versions of Grace's wedding dress were made and used throughout the movie, and her Converse were custom painted yellow since Converse didn't make that color anymore, to kind of contrast with the white wedding dress. Overall, I still enjoyed this movie and had a blast. It's a fun watch, and so far everyone I show it to agrees. And based on everything I said, I give this movie a 10 out of 10. Before I close this out, I have to go over my favorite. For Ready or Not, I'm going to pick a favorite Lado Mas, which is easily Aunt Helene. She looks fucking cool, and her ice-cold nature, combined with her passion for this family tradition, is hilarious. Alright, that's been enough of Ready or Not. Thanks for listening to Talk Some Horror. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did making it. If you're new to the podcast and like what you heard, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. If you want to interact with the show, you can find Talk Some Horror on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. I love to hear your thoughts and opinions on this movie. You can also become a patron over on my Patreon if you want to help pick future episodes and gain access to exclusive content. If you need links, you can find them down in the description or by visiting talksomehorror.com. Join me next week as I cover Valentine. Until then, stay spooky, creeps.